Whew, man, that countdown went fast, huh? Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Omari Salisbury. I'm your host here tonight, and also joined with the moderators for tonight's historic town hall. I have Besa Gordon from KUBE 93 and Marcus Harrison Green. Always make sure I put that middle name in there. He is the founder of the South Seattle Emerald and also a columnist with the Seattle Times. What's up, y'all?
Hey,
How y'all doing?
how you doing today, yo?
I'm doing good. You know, you look real cute in them headphones, Marcus.
I had to break out the black headphones. I usually do the fuchsia, but for tonight, it's in honor of the event. It's black on black everything. So.
Hey, look, I got the black shirt, so I'm close.
All right. Well, you already know how it goes over here, man. All right. Well, although I like kind of the tone that we have right here. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of relaxed and chill. But a lot of serious issues that we're discussing tonight. You know what I'm saying? And we've got a lot going on. We on the community discussion side, we've got King County Council member Zahily, King County District number 2. We've got Seattle School Board Director Brandon Hersey from District 7. And of course, we've got in the second hour, King County Equity Now, and a lot of those guys. Then also you got Mayor Durkan and her executive team. And so, man, it's some hitters on the platform tonight.
I'm excited because first of all, can I just mention that it's not going to be like Tuesday? Can we like toss that out there and let it be known that is not what we're doing today? That is not the point of this event. That is not what I envisioned when we put it together. And I just want for people to know, for the record, we are really just trying to make sure that we are knowing what we're doing for the Black community, who's going to do it, what their plan is, why they feel that their plan is going to work. Like, this really isn't about a bunch of bad energy. This is really about solutions and how we can truly move forward.
Yes.
Right. Is that you were saying that, Marcus?
No, I was just going to co-sign every single thing that my co-moderator said. This is about solutions. This is about moving us forward. This isn't about, again, chaos and negativity and all that you saw in another debate town hall forum on Tuesday.
Yeah, that was wild. All right, let me jump into this. I got a few words here in the beginning, man, and usually I'm good for off the cuff, but I got a few written words here I want to be able to share with everybody, and then we're gonna get literally this show on the road. First of all, though, I want to start the evening by acknowledging other Black media outlets in Seattle that set a foundation for Converge Media to stand upon here today. That'd be the Medium newspaper, Z-Twins Radio, the Facts newspaper, Radio Avenue Radio, and of course, the South Seattle Emerald. I'm acknowledging all of you and all that you have done and that you've come before me and that you've allowed Converge Media to be in this moment. I'm ever thankful and grateful to all of you. I also want to thank our partners tonight, iHeartMedia, KUBE 93, neighbors over at Elysian Brewery, Space Dust IPA, and of course, my colleagues at Converge Media, who have all helped bring us together for a conversation of action that's being transmitted not only online, but also live via radio to reach the largest possible audience across our region to help us all learn, engage, and work towards building the Emerald City that we all deserve. We're here tonight, for sure, on a less than perfect platform. We're going into this with our eyes wide open, knowing that at the end of this 3 hours, many of the same problems that plague our city very well will remain. And the gaps between us might not be any closer, although we're hoping. However, what we have here today is a start, a historic start, and an imperfect first step for conversations to start, and for those of us who love the Emerald City dearly to gain sorely needed insights and understanding at this important juncture in our city's history. Tonight, we have the mayor of our city on the same platform as the leading community voices. They will each have an opportunity to speak to you directly, the citizen stakeholders of Seattle, as to their vision for the future. Tonight presents an opportunity for everyone to listen, to learn, to ask some questions, but most importantly, to walk away from tonight's town hall meeting with a better understanding of the dynamics and forces at play that are trying to forge the future of our city. About tonight's format, The first hour, we'll be having a conversation with community members that hold elected positions, that being King County Council member for District 2, Girmay Zahily, and Seattle School Board Director for District 7, Brandon Hersey, about the challenges and successes that they are facing at this time. The next 2 hours will be a town hall format in which both King County Equity Now, Africa Town, Choose 180, and others, as well as Mayor Durkan and her executive staff, will both have 1 hour to make their case directly to you, the people of Seattle, and in doing so, share their vision and roadmap for the future. They will also be answering questions submitted by the general public via online, via online form, as well as social media, and of course, from our moderators, Marcus Green and Besa Gordon. Community will have the first hour, Mayor Durkan will have the second hour. The purpose of this town hall is first and foremost to educate and inform the citizen stakeholders of Seattle who want to learn more about exactly what's going on around the issues of social justice and historic change in our city. Again, let me read this to you again. The purpose of this town hall is first and foremost to educate and inform the citizen stakeholders of Seattle who want to learn more about what exactly is going on around issues of social justice and historic change in our city. I want to encourage those of you who are viewing and in our viewing and listening audience to take this opportunity to listen, learn, and try your best to understand. People who follow me know one of my favorite lines, you guys hear me say it all the time, is we don't have to agree, but let's make a commitment to understand. Those of us who love this Emerald City owe it to ourselves, our neighbors, to raise the bar of civility and humanity in our fair city. Let's hope that that can start here tonight. Again, I want to thank you for joining us here tonight for this historic town hall. And at this point, I will turn it over to your moderators for this evening, Marcus Green, South Seattle Emerald, and Besa Gordon of KUBE 93. But before I forget, let me remind you to share the stream.
Period. Share the stream.
Yeah, share the stream. Man, oh, you should have ended that with Sikanda forever, bro. I was feeling that Black Panther energy today, I gotta say. Anyway.
The show is yours.
All right. Well, Besa, this is such a historic night. It is such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you, O, for providing this platform for us and for our community. And I don't know, we are going to have just a wonderful night, a wonderful conversation today.
I really can't say any more than that. Besides, really, that's what we need. Like, I'm watching the comments. Everyone's like, look, this is what we've been needing. This is what we've been waiting for. And I'm so happy to be a part of this moment and literally giving our city the questions and answers that they want. And I'm pretty sure there's people watching all across the nation, and they're probably like, yo, why can't we do this here? Right. So, yeah.
Well, the thing is that they can, right? And they can follow suit with us and Converge, one of the best media outlets in the land. So
well, I appreciate it. And I'll tell you this, if we can now, you know, this is a first step. I know some people, they're ready for celebrity deathmatch. We're not quite there yet. But, you know, I mean, in Seattle, if we can get people talking in conversations like this, in Seattle, amongst a lot of cities across America, Seattle's probably one of the furthest apart, you know what I'm saying? Considering what's going on. If we can get to talking here, I think, you know, it's conversation that can go all across the country.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, we live in a time period where there is just a bombardment of information and not enough truth. And at the end of the day, today, we are just trying to get down to the truth. So, yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. Well,
I'll let you guys get to your guest. Who you got?
All right. Well, Marcus, you want to bring him in?
All right, let's do it. We have Brandon Hersey. He is a school board director for District 2 in the Seattle School Board. Brandon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, but just a quick correction. That's District 7, Southeast
District
Seattle.
7. Sorry. My bad, brother. My bad. I had District 2 on my mind.
Hey, man, I hear you.
And then we also have somebody who is, I'll say, near and dear to my heart, because he represents the area of town that I live in Skyway and Lake Ridge, Girmay Zahily, who represents District 2 in King County. How are you doing today, Councilmember Girmay?
Are you muted?
Brother Girmay, looks like you are muted. Can you unmute for the audience? It's all good.
One time for 2020.
All right. I'm sure whatever you said while you were muted, it was just gold.
Yeah, I sent positivity to each one of you, showed you some love. I can do it again if you want me
to. Well, hey, I want to set the scene, start this off with the question for you all, in the sense that obviously in Seattle we have Seattle and in the county that we're in, King County Council, we have King County Council, we have Seattle City Council, we have the Port Commission of Seattle, and we also have the Seattle School District. Now, the Seattle School Board. Now, out of all of those positions, you are the only 2 Black elected officials. So what type of pressure is that on you to represent our community and do it knowing that our community is not a monolith, obviously?
Brandon, you got it. I know what you've been going through.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And so what I would just say first is that, I mean, the pressure is enormous, right? And I think that, I feel really fortunate coming into the political stage in this area at the same time as Councilmember Zahily. And one of the things that we really wanted to make sure that we did from the jump was make sure that we were as aligned as possible, that we were breaking down silos and barriers between the county and between the school district. And really what we're seeing is a lot of success with that, because as we have more and more younger folks getting involved in electoral office, we're really continuing to break down those barriers of communication that have kept our system from working in the interest of Black communities specifically, but also young folks, people of color. And that has really been one of the driving factors, I know, for me stepping into this role, is really bringing, the community vision that we have, not only as a Black community, to the school district, but how does that intertwine with what's happening at the council, what's happening at the county council, what's happening at the port? One of the things that I'm really thankful for, especially from the leadership of Councilmember Zahily, is the push toward a participatory budgeting process, not only at the county level, but now that's something that we're exploring at the school district level as well. And so now we're really just trying to figure out, from the perspective, especially as a Black man in this community and as a young Black man, I want to make sure that my tax dollars are going to places that I can see real benefit to the kids that look like me. And the more we can have that happen, not only at the county level, but also at the district level and what have you, the more we're really going to bring our community into the process to make sure that they have true ownership over where those resources and dollars are going.
All right.
I would love, sorry, Marcus, what were you going to say?
That was me. I was going to make fun of Brandon for calling himself a young man.
Oh, man. Younger than you?
Yeah. Are we starting early?
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this real quick. What is something that you are doing to make sure that Black people are properly invested in the communities in your areas and they're not being forgotten, especially during this time in COVID?
Yeah, this connects to Marcus's last question about being the only one of, the only Black person elected, not only at the King County level, but I'm the only Black county council member in the entire state of Washington, only person of color on a county council in the state of Washington. So it makes these issues a lot more personal. One of the communities that I grew up in is Skyway, and now I represent that district. And what I see in Skyway every day, the lack of investment, people struggling, that affects me in a very personal way. And so what have I done for it is, first of all, call it as it is. The lack of investment in Skyway is systemic racism. That's what it is. Skyway has the highest proportion of African Americans in the entire state of Washington. It also happens to be the community that is disinvested in the most. There's no affordable housing being invested there. There aren't barely any King County budget being historically being directed that way. And we have to remind ourselves that systemic racism does not require intent. You do not have to have intent to cause harm to be promoting systemic racism. If you are disinvesting in the neighborhood that has the highest proportion of Black people, that's systemic racism. It's about outcomes. And what we've been able to do, to answer your question, Besa, is elevate this messaging as much as we can. We've been able to write countless articles, hold budget town halls, hold workshops, build with the community that exists there, the people who have already been doing a lot of great work in Skyway for a long time. And for the first time in a generation, we're starting to see the needle move with the executive's proposed budget for Skyway now. $10 million of seed investment for a Skyway community center is coming. $10 million of participatory budgeting for things like capital investments and infrastructure in Skyway. We've seen the executive move $4.6 million of marijuana revenue away from the sheriff's office and toward community-based programs. These are all things that wouldn't happen without community organizing and calling for this for such a long time. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but it's a start, and we're starting to see the needle move.
Can I ask one quick question, like a quick follow-up question?
Yeah.
If you were not in this position, because I feel like Skyway has been literally hungry for this for years, you know, do you feel like this is something that would be happening if you were not in this position to push for all of this, or do you think they would have figured it out eventually?
I think change happens when elected officials partner with community organizers and community organizations in a meaningful and authentic way to build on the work that community has already been doing for a long time, remove the obstacles from them, and also grant them the power to take care of themselves, because they're already taking care of themselves. So all my office did was elevate the voices of people who've already been doing this work for a long time. And so would it happen if we were in this position? I don't know. I can't say. But I think we have been fortunate that my time in office has coincided with the largest uprising of Black voices in the history of this country. And so that has helped push a lot of our agenda across the finish line.
Right. Let me follow up on that a bit, in the sense that, I mean, we already alluded to the fact that Brandon and Girmay, you all are, you know, two you are the only two in terms of our elected officials out here, at least at the county and the city level. And so that means that you do have to talk with and sometimes be collegial, obviously, with folks who are a lot of times anti, you know, your platforms and anti, you know, moving the ball forward. How are you able to work with folks, you know, to make sure that you know, our community is advancing? Because, you know, I've lived in Skyway for the majority of my life, and I'll tell you, like, I have not seen, you know, this amount of advancement in I'll say my lifetime.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So for me personally, the way that I look at all of my decision making is just point blank: does this improve the situation for marginalized students, those who we classify as furthest away from educational justice, Black and brown students, or does this perpetuate systemic racism in the school district that we have, right? And honestly, when you boil down every single decision to that question, the answer becomes really, really clear. I think for us in Seattle Public Schools, we have a really bold strategic plan, but a strategic plan is only as good as the policy and the workforce that backs it up. So for me, what that looks like is making sure that we're making sound policy in partnership with our educators, in partnership with our principals, but most importantly, in partnership with our students and our parents. Recently, there was a Black Education Now rally that was held at Rainier Beach over the summer in response to the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and really calling on our entire system to bring forth not only resources, but also give space to our students to give us the tools necessary and to point us in the direction of where we need to be to actually make this an equitable education system. And what that means for us is that, especially, and when I say us, I mean people who are at this, you know, theoretical table, is we don't just need to continue to invite people to the table unless we're ready to get up and give up our seats at the head of that table when it comes to decision making. And so for me and for other members of our board, the school district is actually quite nimble. Since we only have 7 representatives from across the entire city, you really only need 4 votes to push something through. And I believe with this board that we have right now, we are headed in the direction of working directly with community, actually listening to our students, figuring out how not only do we meet their demands, but how do we do that expeditiously. And I'm really excited to continue that work, and I'm excited for the work that this board still has left to do, because playtime is over. We've seen over the summer that not only during the backdrop of this pandemic, but we're very much so facing dual pandemics. The first one being racism that folks, it seemingly are just now starting to pay attention to. So as a Black board member, the only Black board member and educator on the school board, you know, this timing that we have in this moment is incredibly important. And we all have a responsibility to make sure that we're meeting not only the needs of our students, but especially and specifically the needs of our Black students.
Right. So Brandon, what does that specifically look like, though? Right. I mean, I know, as you alluded to, right. I mean, going through this COVID crisis, I mean, that is just widening the education gap that we have had persistently in Seattle public schools. And we have heard from school board members in the past that, hey, you know, we are going to narrow this gap, only for it to either persist or grow wider. So how do we address this specifically?
So there's lots of things that we can talk about that I'm really excited to share with you. So the first thing is that we, over the summer, passed a resolution recommitting our district to the interests and efforts of our Black students. And what that looks like is we removed SEOs, which are student emphasis officers, and student resource officers from public schools, right? And because we know firsthand that Black students are over-policed at ridiculous rates, especially in schools. And so the first step to that is removing a police presence in our schools, because we believe strongly that there are organizations like Choose 180, like Community Passageways, that can give our school system and give our students the support that they need instead of having an armed officer in the building. The next thing that we did was that we just recently passed a student community workforce agreement. And what that means is that when there's a new project that's being built in a neighborhood, for example, Rainier Beach is getting a new high school very shortly. This allows for our students and their families and folks in that neighborhood to be hired onto that project and given priority. And we see that largely as a win for economic justice for our students, because oftentimes we have these major $1 million contracts that come through the school district, but yet there's no access for the communities where those projects are going for students to be able to take part and actually benefit from those projects, right? In addition to that, we've also moved to making sure that we are a one-to-one district, which means that there is an electronic device that is available for every single student in our district so that they can have the connectivity and the basic access to internet that they need to be successful during this time of remote learning. You know, we could go on and on about the few things that we have done in these short months that this current board has been operating. But what I really want to make clear is that this board is focused on community engagement. This is the time that if we are taking ideas that are coming straight from the community, we believe strongly that that is going to create the systems and change that are needed to actually close the achievement and opportunity gap, rather, that we've been talking about for so long. Because we have to have people in the places to actually vote for these progressive policies, like student community workforce agreements, like removing police officers from schools, like ensuring that we have one-to-one devices for every student, that give us the opportunity to actually move the needle on those issues.
Sorry, I was muted, but I concur.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I have another question for you, Brandon, but I'm going to jump over to Girmay real quick. I have questions about economic integration and what you are currently doing in Skyway to make sure that your residents actually do have some land. I did see something about how you are working with business owners to own a building that was about to get bought out or something like that. So that way it doesn't go to the city, but they actually have some equity.
Yeah, I always think of Skyway as the greatest opportunity that our state has to invest without displacing. If you go to the northern parts of my district, you'll see the Central District, you'll see South Seattle, and what has happened there is just economic tsunami of unchecked, unregulated capitalism, wiping people away from the northern parts of my district. And now Skyway is the area that has the highest proportion of Black people in the entire state of Washington. But it's not going to stay that way if we don't act fast. That same economic tidal wave is coming for Skyway next. And that, I'm not going to lie, that keeps me up at night every single night. So what we need to do right now is invest as much as we can in affordable housing, in community ownership of land and property, and also pass the kinds of legislation that are going to keep people housed and homed in Seattle, in Skyway, for as long as they so choose. So one of the things that we're working on right now is the idea of commercial tenants owning their building, because what's going to happen is the moment that speculative real estate developers and realtors start seeing that Skyway is this next spot, they're going to start buying up land, they're going to start buying up property, and that's going to displace the commercial tenants, the small Black business owners who operate there. And so there's one specific building right now that's for sale that we're working aggressively and quickly with the tenants there to see what options we have to help those tenants own that building. Because when you do that and you do it by a building by building basis, you can prevent dozens of small marginalized community Black owned businesses from being displaced, and you can save them for a generation. So those are the kinds of things that we're working on now. Community ownership, commercial tenant, cooperative ownership. These are all models that we all need to focus on.
Well, Girmay, and I know that you have definitely talked about this tsunami, this economic tsunami that is coming for Skyway. I was driving through the area the other day, seeing all these for sale signs on homes and everything else, and it looked like it was already here, to be quite honest with you. So what things can we sort of immediately do? And sometimes it seems like we can't wait necessarily for policy and the political, machinations to play out. As I was talking to a Skyway community member yesterday, and they were like, we needed this 8-10 years ago. How do we, drastically, put things in place so that we can avoid this economic tsunami that is, is here, is coming, and doesn't seem to be abating?
We need to hold our elected officials accountable. We live in a county with Martin Luther King's face as the symbol. We live in a city of Seattle with Chief Sealth as the flag, but Black people and Indigenous people are doing the worst of anybody in these places. So we can no longer rely on symbolic gestures, performative gestures. We have to hold elected officials accountable to real concrete change, to community ownership, to wealth promotion, to eliminating systemic harm. These are all things that community has been asking for a long time. And now we have the political environment to actually act on these things. So I would encourage everybody listening to this to Google who are your representatives at every single level, at the school board level, city level, county level, state and federal level, and ask them, what are you doing to actually facilitate this new normal rooted in equity that community has been asking for? Because first of all, there is no elected official who on their own can bring about all the changes that they say they're going to bring about. Elected officials on their own can be obstacles and be destructive to a cause, but on their own, they cannot bring about the changes that they are calling for. So we have to collaborate with community that's already doing the work, that's already taking care of itself, eliminate systemic harm, and open doors to resources and direct resources in a way that's equitable and that makes the good work that community's already doing even better.
I agree. Marcus, don't we have a question from Super for Brandon? Or am I wrong?
No, we do. And so Brandon,
Yeah.
I actually wanted to ask you, as you know, so many people are with everything having to shift online in terms of online learning and so forth for the school year here. So many folks in Black and Brown communities have low rates of online engagement, and there was a recent report in the Seattle Times actually that came out that was saying that there's a widening gap when it comes to education because of online access, as you know. So what tools can we put into place to make sure, right, that there is equal access to education right now, today, that our kids don't fall farther behind?
Absolutely. And first, I just want to say thank you. I've been monitoring the chat as it pops up here. I think that there are a lot of educators from Seattle and beyond in this and really engaging in this process. So I see you and thank you for making the time, because as a second grade teacher myself down in Federal Way, I know that these days just keep getting longer and longer. And I know firsthand that we have a serious issue with engagement in providing the opportunity and the tools necessary for our students to be able to engage, right? So what we as a system need to do is we need to realize that there are things that are within our control and things that we need to have impact on, even though they might be out of our control. And let me explain what I mean by that. Like we talked about earlier, we moved to have one-to-one devices for every student, which was a huge obstacle before because there are so many families that are concerned about screen time for their kid. And what we as a system need to do is we need to stop fearing technology and actually teach our students how to use it effectively, right? Now that we are in a position to where we have the tools that we need to do a better job of communicating the availability of those tools. We need from OSPI to establish a central translation service so that we can actually translate every educational material that comes from any district in our state, to make sure that the folks who need it most, who might not necessarily speak English as a first language, still can participate and feel empowered in their child's educational experience, right? Additionally, we also need to realize that not everyone throughout this pandemic has the luxury to quarantine and to be at home with their children all day, right? So what we need to make sure is that we are providing not only resources available during the school day, but also resources that go outside of the hours of 8 to 3 to ensure that whether your most availability is to connect during the day or asynchronously after school, that we are meeting you where you are at. And what we also need to realize is that we can make all the nice fancy policy at the top, but if that's not necessarily getting down to the grassroots level for our educators and our students, then that is all for naught. And what we have a serious problem systemically in this district is that we do a really great job of bringing people to the table, like I was talking about earlier, asking them for their feedback and then not acting on it, or not actually doing everything that we can to make sure that our teachers and our families, but most importantly, our students feel supported. So what really needs to happen is that we need to hold the principals, directors of schools, our superintendent, chiefs, and especially the school board accountable for ensuring that we're not just making policy for lip service, that this has actual outcomes for our students. And I am really proud to sit on this board as an educator, because my predecessor, Betty Patu, who served for over a decade in this area, was the only educator on the board for a number of years. And I am so excited to continue that legacy, because if we do not have young educators of color in decision-making places within our district, we are going to continue to have an opportunity gap that widens, and Black students will be the ones who lose out here. So really, quite frankly, this is a new day in Seattle Public Schools, and I am looking forward to working closely with our educators who have the closest and best relationships with our students to not only develop policy that is in their interest, but also figure out how do we make procedure possible, right? Because so many of our teachers right now are struggling to not only learn new systems, but to also use them effectively. I know personally that I spent close to 40, 50 hours a week over my summer, just making sure that I knew how to use all of the tools properly, right? So that we could provide a better educational experience than what we were able to provide in the spring. And teachers all across this district are doing the same thing, if not more. And so we as a system need to do everything that we can to honor that, to acknowledge that, and to support that. And if we don't, then we are failing every single one of our students.
Ooh. First and foremost, I don't know where to go from there. Besides to take a question that is coming from our audience, and a big thing I continuously have seen, like, yo, give Brandon a hand to clap, first and foremost. But a big question that people are saying is a lot of students have outdated laptops. Yep. And that seems to be, at least from what I'm seeing through these comments, possibly one big reason as to why they're not logging on. So is there a solution for these outdated laptops? I mean, I know me, I grew up in a household where I didn't get my first laptop till college. I didn't get internet until I could pay for it. I was like, what are we doing for these low income students that are literally only able to get the laptop that the school provides because their parents doesn't have the money to buy a Mac? Their parents doesn't have the money to get the newest Google Chromebook, and they're sitting here struggling to do their homework or even pay attention to class because maybe the internet's lagging and it's too slow. Right,
absolutely. And one of the big things that we need to do is we need to assess and reprioritize where we are spending our money, right? Because there is so much bloat, I will tell you firsthand, throughout this district, that we focus on ensuring that we have quality technology, but it doesn't just end with laptops. We need to be working directly with the city, with the state, and with the county council to make broadband a public utility. We need to make sure that we are not just succumbing to all of these major companies, because even with the coupons, so right now we have a program where we are handing out coupons, right, for internet access, and those coupons aren't even being honored to the same way that they are being advertised from major companies like Comcast, this, that, and the other. So what we really need to do is take this as a lesson learned, and we all need to build a very serious coalition about what it looks like to have internet access for every single person that lives in this area. Because it's going to take, let's be honest, it's going to take a number of things. It's going to take making sure that we have up-to-date technology. It's going to take making sure that we have access to broadband. And then it's going to also make sure that we have a system in which the barriers to signing up for that broadband are reduced, right? Because it is a hassle for so many families who are working 80-hour weeks with 4 kids at home to find the time to go sign up for a new service, right? So what role can we as elected officials play in breaking down as many of those barriers as possible to connecting to get what you are entitled to as basic education a priority, right? And that's going to start taking, like we talked about at the beginning, breaking down those communication barriers. The fact that Girmay and I have a solid relationship to where I could call him and ask him and pick his brain about how do we effectively get this done. That was not present before in a lot of respects. Lots of our school board directors who have been here for a number of years do not have current relationships with city council people, state legislators, the county council. Really, where this all begins is acknowledging the fact that our systems, the way that they are designed, are very broken. And the only way we are going to fix this is with an unyielding solidarity that this community has yet to see. And if we are not prepared to do that, then we are not prepared to seriously talk about or advocate on these issues. And I invite every other elected official in this area to join in this conversation, because if you're not, then you are not effectively serving your constituents.
Understood. Well,
talk that talk, Brandon. Talk that talk.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of talking the talk and walking the talk as well, Brandon, you talked about obviously needing to support our families and those families that are from our most marginalized communities. Now, they always say, there's a saying that there are the marginalized of the marginalized. And I know that there are several families who are dealing with children with mental health needs. How is the school district able to support those folks, and what are y'all doing specifically to make sure those people are supported?
And so we have a number of COVID-19 mental health specific resources that folks have access to, right? But again, there are so many barriers that prevent that access. Not speaking English as a first language, not even knowing that those resources exist, right? So what we are doing, or what I am doing, is I meet weekly with our Seattle Council PTSA, different PTSA representatives throughout the South End, and just real-time problem solving. And what that looks like is that these folks are really plugged into their school community. So what they do is we all come together and they let me know specifically what's working, what's not, and who needs what. And when we have that type of serious and authentic family engagement, real change happens. We had a family that did not even know if we were starting school in a virtual or a remote model, and that is on us. We have to do a better job of connecting directly with our families to figure out what are the resources that they need, and how are the resources that we're providing working, but most importantly, how are they not, right? So that's the kind of communication that's necessary to address what you're talking about, is ensuring that we have clear and open two-way communication, not us just feeding information or reporting information, but rather going to our communities, looking for authentic feedback, showing up ready to listen, and then also being prepared to act.
These comments is lit. Let me tell you that. These comments is lit. Girmay, what do you think about the best way to make sure that in all low income places, students have something to do? Is that like something that could happen for all low income areas in Seattle, or is that really something that each community has to like truly push for?
That's something that we can absolutely do in King County broadly. Besa, I think I told you this before, but I grew up in both South Seattle and in Skyway. My childhood was spent in South Seattle in places like Rainier Vista and Holly Park. And then my teenage years, while I was going to Franklin, I lived in Skyway. And the difference between the two was stark. Already, South Seattle is an under-resourced area, but you can't even compare it to what it was like in Skyway. When I was in Holly Park and Rainier Vista, yes, it was an under-resourced neighborhood, but at least we had community centers in walking distance. At least there were basketball courts that I could go and play at least there were after-school programs. When we moved to Skyway, just a few blocks south, or maybe a couple miles south, there's no community center. There's one very infrequent bus line. It was actually super damaging to us emotionally, and my siblings and I talk about it all the time, to not have anything to do to engage us. And then I know some people are out there saying, where were your parents? Why didn't your parents do? Well, we live in a system where my single parent had to work 3 jobs all at once to take care of us. That's what it took to pay basic rent, 3 jobs. And she wasn't home, and we didn't have things to do after school. And that's really what we're dealing with. And then people wonder why young people in our region do activities and things that we don't want them to do. It's because we haven't invested in them enough. These are structural barriers. This is systemic disinvestment from neighborhoods, and it is by race. I spoke earlier about it does not have to have intent to do harm to be systemic racism. Systemic racism is about outcomes. And so what we need to do is walk the walk. You know, Marcus, you just said that phrase, you have to walk the talk. We have a county that uses equity and social framework as our equity and social justice as our framework for doing things. And yet the community that has maybe the highest equity social justice score by our own metrics is the area where kids don't have things to do. Kids have to hang out in parking lots because they don't have community centers, because they don't have a basketball court, because they don't have things to do. And so we should take our equity framework, actually walk the walk, put the investments in the right place, and support the community organizations that are already doing incredible things on a shoestring budget. So that's what we need to do.
Yeah. Well, Girmay, you know, following on that track, I know that you're well aware that there had been an uptick in gun violence in South King County and South Seattle over the summertime. Obviously, I know there's a saying that jobs and activity stops bullets. And as you alluded to when you were growing up, right, there needed to be things and activities for our young folks to do. So obviously there is going to be money in this budget to hopefully have a community center in Skyway. I know that I want to say they've been talking about that for the last 2 decades, and hopefully that will actually materialize. But if it does, what does that actually look like in terms of community centers, right? I mean, there's community centers and then there's community centers. So how would this one be different than just putting up a structure? There's a couple of halls in there, or a place that you can, you know, have a community meeting, and that's it. Like, how is it actually resourced in a way that it fits the needs of the community of Skyway?
It all goes to what the community has been asking for. You know, we have a community needs list where Skyway residents have been incorporating what they want to see in a community center and in their neighborhood broadly. They've also written 100 times over for years and years and years what they specifically need in their community. So it really is just King County and the state of Washington putting the resources in the right place and removing the barriers to accomplishing exactly what kind of needs the community has. I would say that it should be somewhere that's walking distance in the areas that already have commercial and social activity, by the Skyway Library, by grocery outlet, by all these places that are already hubs for activity. I think that's where a community, those areas are where a community center should be. But your question more broadly about public safety, Marcus, I've been wanting to bring this up with you, but today you wrote in the Seattle Times probably one of the single most powerful articles I've ever read in my life. And I'm not saying that to exaggerate. And I see how many people have been sharing it. And I think most people feel that way as well. It was truly one of the most powerful articles I've ever read. And for you to be that vulnerable and share such a personal story to advance the cause of having a better system of public safety, thank you for doing that. And we have an opportunity to fulfill the vision that you laid out in that article, right? Right now, we have a system where we send armed police officers to respond to basically every challenge that we see on our streets. That is an ineffective way of promoting public safety, and it actually causes a lot of harm. Just like you described, Marcus, you said that you were afraid that in your moment of need, when you needed support, that somebody would come and actually do the complete opposite, cause trauma to you and your mother who was there with you. And so what we need is to move away from that system and transfer public safety functions away from that system and to a diverse toolkit of public health and community-based alternatives. We can't do that right now in King County because we have charter and constitutional prohibitions to what the King County Council can do in terms of public safety and law enforcement. But if people vote yes on Charter Amendment number 6 this November, that would remove those prohibitions and allow King County Council to make those kinds of changes, to transfer public safety functions away from traditional law enforcement and toward community-based and public health alternatives. Again, if people vote yes on Charter Amendment 6, because people like you shouldn't live in fear, Marcus, because of something that's out of your control. That's something that if our systems were better, that you would feel safe calling 911 for. You should not have to call an Uber because you don't feel safe calling 911.
Right. Well, Girmay, I gotta have you to be my hype man just at all times, I suppose, for all my articles. No, but seriously, thank you for that. People can also read that in the South Seattle Emerald tomorrow without a paywall. But yeah, thank you for everybody who did read that. All that being said, I want to ask you what gives you hope in this moment now? And I say that I think I speak for everybody who is listening, who is watching right now, when I say this is a time period where there seems to be a lot of grief and grimness piling up locally and nationally. What continues to give you hope and continues to have you all move forward?
Yeah, man. My second graders, honestly, they're going from being able to spend every day with my group of 8-year-olds and just exposing them to all of the amazing things that are in the world, space, science, math, reading, all the fantastic literature that exists, to only being able to interact with them throughout the majority of the past year through a screen has been a challenge, and it's a pain that not only teachers but families throughout this area and throughout this nation are feeling, right? But logging in and seeing those faces every single day, that they are so resilient, even in the midst of an incredibly broken system that we are handing them, that gives me hope that there is a light at the end of this tunnel. And it is our youth, right? The organizers of the Black Education Now rally, the organizers from Black and Brown Lives Matter, the organizers that clearly showed us throughout this summer that the youth right now are the truth right now, and they have the answers, and they've had the answers all along, and all we need to do is get out of the way and implement those answers. That is the type of society that I want to live in, and that is the type of society that I want to be a part of creating. And so when you talk about hope, man, Look at all of the amazing things our kids are doing. Look at all of the amazing things that they are showing us day in and day out. And so that is where I go for when I need my uplift, is just seeing how resilient and how focused and how ready our youth are, even in this incredibly messed up system that we have handed them. And I would just encourage anyone else to do the same, because those babies are our future. And if we are not doing every single thing that we can do to support them, whether it be in school, whether it be in the development of a community center, whether it be defunding the police to the actual limit that they called for, then we need to seriously assess what type of society do we want to live in and be a part of, because that's not the type of society that I want to work with. I want to work with a group of folks in a community that is focused on bringing the most marginalized peoples to the forefront of decision making and power, so that we can actually build a system that we can be proud of, not one that is steeped in inequity and systemic racism. Man,
Brandon, do you got a teleprompter, bro? Is that just really? Okay, I'm just checking. I ain't trying to fake. I ain't trying to fake the funk on nobody. So I'm just trying. Great. My same question for you, sir.
Whoa.
This man said the youth right now are the truth right now. That is bars for days. So I'm gonna put that one in fire emoji. No, that was really good. Besa, what's going on?
Yo, the biggest bird just landed on my window.
Bruh.
That's hope. That's hope.
That's a good omen.
I wanted no part.
In ancient Kush society, that would have been that's a great omen. That's a great omen. So anyhow, but Councilmember Girmay, yeah.
For all the grief and sorrow and tragedy that you described, Marcus, the same level and the same magnitude of hope has happened at the exact same time in response to those negative things. And that's what gives me hope. We have been able to see the largest movement in American history rise up against these harmful systems. We've been able to see countless coalitions forming against harmful systems. We've been able to see our youth marching in the streets nonstop, putting life and limb on the line for change. These are the most hopeful things that you could ever ask for. And the impact of that is even more hopeful, because the actions of these organizers and these young people have created the political environment to pass things that would have never, ever been possible even 7-8 months ago. Like we're truly living in a different world right now because of the action that our organizers and youth have been taking to create the political environment for us to do this. So that's what gives me hope. And then you look at the fact that so many different coalitions have formed in response to these harmful things that have been happening. It shows that we are all we have. We are sticking together more so than ever. We're seeing cross-racial, cross-generational coalitions and organizing and marching more than I've ever seen in my entire life. We've seen King County Equity Now form. We've seen Decrim Seattle form. We've seen Partners in Change form. We've seen the Skyway Tukwila Coalition form. People are really coming together because they understand if we don't fight for each other, we are going to lose. And it's going to result in Black and brown people dying disproportionately. And that this awakening nationally that's happening, I can't help but feel anything other than hope.
Hey, Sean. Of course, we're talking to production now. Do we have that question that Supa gave for Brandon? Maybe, just maybe.
Hey, what's up? It's DJ Super Sam, KUBE 93.3. My question is for Mr. Brandon Hersey, Director of the Seattle School Board for District 7. Now, as a parent myself during this COVID era, I wanted to ask this particular listener question. Is the city of Seattle considering some type of reform education program to integrate in public schools regarding the Black Lives Matter movement, refugees, social justice, immigration, etc.?
Yeah, so I need a little bit more clarity. Are we talking about like reintegrating like curriculum around those things? I just want to make sure that I understand.
Let's run with curriculum, because I know that a lot of people do have questions about like LGBTQ being included in curriculum, but Black lives are in just like really true Black history is not being included.
Absolutely, absolutely. So first, there are a couple of things that we're doing, right? So 3 years ago, the Seattle School Board unanimously passed a resolution saying that we wanted to develop an ethnic studies curriculum. And we have not been able to deliver on that promise. We have actually fallen quite short of being able to do that. And I'm really thankful that, you know, in the wake of our shortcomings with that, Washington Ethnic Studies now, under the leadership of Tracy Castro Gill, has been formed. I think that where we really need to be as a district in order to move forward and make sure that we are not only developing curriculum, but also preparing our educators to deliver that curriculum. Because what I know firsthand as a teacher is that curriculum is great, but if you don't have a workforce that knows how to deliver culturally competent curriculum, you're actually going to conduct and do more harm. And we need to make sure that we avoid that at all costs. One of the tenets of that resolution that I mentioned earlier, recommitting ourselves to our Black students, directs our superintendent specifically to start developing a curriculum specifically focused around Black studies. And my intent is to have that curriculum be focused right here in Seattle and developed by the community organizers and all of the various organizations that council members I just mentioned that have been doing work in this area for decades. So I'm not really interested in purchasing some curriculum. I think that it needs to be developed by the community leaders and our educators who are doing this work every day. But then also we need to have an accountability system within our school district that gives us very clear parameters that, like, if you are not capable or if you are choosing not to deliver curriculum in a culturally competent way, then you need to find somewhere else to teach. We need to do everything in our power if we are going to move in this direction, because it's one thing to develop a resource, it's another thing to hold people accountable to it. So yes, we are developing curriculum, but that's only a very small part of the entire conversation. We need to rethink what the word accountability means in our school system, and we need to have a way that we can track and hold every part of our system accountable to doing just that.
All right.
Answered my question.
Yes. Well, I know that we are coming to the finish line, unfortunately, but I wanted to give you all the floor just for 1 minute apiece to talk to the folks who are listening today, who are watching today. What is the most important thing that they can do between now and next year in order to affect change in their community?
Vote. I don't need a minute.
Vote and support your local organizers, because they are really doing the work to create the environment for us to do some phenomenal things in King County and Seattle. I'm sure if you go to Instagram pages of King County Equity Now, Decrim Seattle, COVID-19 Mutual Aid, these are all places where really important organizers are doing the work every single day to take care of our community and to hold elected officials accountable. So vote and support the people who are holding the people that you voted accountable.
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
And before we get out of here, I just want to thank y'all, honestly. Like, every time I come into spaces, especially with all of this magnificent melanin, I leave so excited to go back to my classroom and go back to my role as a school board director. This has been uplifting for me as well. And just to see so many participants in the chat, like, much love to y'all, because we really need to be coming together in ways like this more often, especially as a Black community right now, because this has done wonders for my mental health. And I really just, again, want to appreciate Converge, iHeartMedia, and all of the South Seattle Emerald and all of the other organizations that came together to make this possible, because this is what I needed today, for real, for real.
And can I give a quick shout out too? I want to shout out 3 people really quickly. Number 1, Marcus, I already gave you your love, that article you wrote today, and the way that you continue to put out really important stories representing the South End, my home. We really appreciate you. Besa, I grew up listening to KUBE 93. What you've been doing to really use this platform to advance really positive changes in our community has been amazing to see. You've been out there talking about the census, talking about voting, talking about supporting really important issues, using KUBE like that. Thank you for doing that. And then last but not least, of course, Omari, what he's been able to do during this time of chaos and crisis to really elevate important voices and be on the ground reporting the facts with no spin. You got to appreciate that and show mad love and respect.
Most stuff.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, I don't know if we have any Black superhero theme music to go out with, but it's in my head. It's playing in my head right now.
Man, I got Black is King playing in the background somewhere.
Hey, turn that up.
Shout out to Besa.
All right. All right. Well, just thank you so much, both of you, again, for being on, and you continue to wish you all good fortune in all that you do. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
See y'all later.
Peace and love, y'all.
Take care.
That was lit.
That was all right. That was all right. Even with the bird making a cameo, that was cool. That was cool.
Yo, the bird scared the crap out of me, y'all. Thump on my window, and those birds, they like to go into building windows, and it was like that big. Whatever.
You handled it well, though. Anything is bound to happen. We live, so that's how we do it.
Everybody would just see it. What up, Bob?
Yeah, you know, it was crazy because the Urban Ace is live tweeting, and the Urban Ace, he put an emoji up there of a bird, and it was like, Besa just got scared by a bird. So like he's live tweeting all this serious stuff. Lamar says this, Hersey says that, and then there's an emoji, and it's like, hey, it's a bird. Hey,
I just want to say I love how you come in and you drop in. It's like Star Wars, bro. You just drop in like Yoda.
I'm not afraid. It scared the crap out of me.
Hey, I'm using the force.
But you know, at the end of the day, the work that has been demonstrated, the work that we've been able to do with so many different partners and community entities and community members is really just a demonstration that another path is possible. Another world is possible. It's not just gentrification happens. No, gentrification and displacement is a product of people's choices. So different choices can produce a different outcomes. And so what we need is greater investment. This is why we put out the call for $1 billion fund to scale up, because those are just really a drop in the bucket, right? If 100,000 people are coming to Seattle a year, how many of those are Black people? Where do they work? What do they own? Where do they live, right? These are the numbers that we need to be measuring going forward to understand what is happening. And the budget, the redirecting funds from ineffective police, you know, that exhibit this Proud Boy behavior time and time again for decades, redirecting that money to community for more effective public safety strategies is mandatory.